Welcome to MadHouse-Creations. Today I'm going to show you guys how I took a resin skull and a spine from Amazon, turned it into a bloody prop that looked awesome on your porch. To start out here, we're going to take our spine and remove the hip bones. There's just a couple of screws holding this together. And once the hip bones are removed, we'll set them aside for a future project. The spine that I found that was cheap had all these plastic nerves in it that I wanted to remove. So I pulled out what I could, and then I realized I had to take it apart to get the ones going down the center of the spine. This top piece here, we're going to pull it off and save it. The skull, we're going to discard. And there's a little nut here on the metal rod that we're going to take off so we can remove the vertebrae and pull the plastic pieces out. I ended up taking off a lot more than I needed to. I could have just pulled off a couple and then slid them up and down the rod to remove the nerves. So to save yourself some time, don't take the whole thing apart. This is what I could have done from the beginning, is just slid the vertebrae and pulled the plastic pieces out. Once all the nerves are out, you just line it back up and reassemble the spine. And once the spine is all lined back up and put back together, we just replace the nut and tighten it down. On this, I'm also going to discard the little ring hook for hanging it. And this is that first vertebrae that connects to the skull. Just trying to figure out how it went together so I can figure out how to attach it to the resin skull. I'm just going to take some Gorilla Glue, and I used quite a bit of glue on this because I wanted to make sure it really held tight. I knew it was going to foam up and expand, but it was all covered up in the future steps that we're going to do. And once it was on there and I made sure it had as much contact as possible to the skull, I just added quite a bit more glue and then set it aside and let it dry for, I think it was about 3 hours on this one. So once that glue set up, after about 3 hours, I started by drilling a hole into the skull. This will allow the bolt on the spine to go inside the skull and the vertebrae will sit flush with each other. I removed a little bit of the excess glue, and I had some wires in there that I was using to hold it while it dried that I will remove. Once it was cleaned up and I knew that the spine would fit in it nicely, I went back and added some Gorilla Glue. I added quite a bit of glue to make sure it had a lot of surface contact. I wasn't sure how strong it would be, but it ended up working very well. I let it sit for another couple hours, so what I did was propped up the head and the spine, just using the rolls of tape to support it where I wanted it, and just didn't touch it after that. Now this is the next day. The head is completely cured and connected to the spine. So here I'm just using some latex and cotton balls to give it kind of that corpsed look, like the muscle fibers. I was focusing mostly on the jaw at this point. I was hoping the latex and the cotton would hold the jaw open. But after I finished this one side, I decided to go back and glue the jaw. And this is a really simple process. You just put down some latex, press the cotton into it, and then come back with a little more latex and kind of pat over the top. And I use popsicle sticks and toothpicks to stretch it into the shape or to make it look the way I want. It gets kind of stringy, so you can pull it and make it look kind of nasty and gory, I guess. And on this, you just want to take your time, make it look exactly the way you want it. The latex takes quite a while to dry, especially when it's cold, so you have plenty of working time to move things around. And you just keep applying layer by layer until you're happy with it. And once I was happy with the mouth, I wanted to have a few stringy bits hanging across the teeth just to give it a different look. I moved on to the back of the head, doing the same thing, just trying to get a little layer of cotton and latex kind of spread around the entire thing. And now working on the spine, what I was doing was building up I was putting a real heavy layer of cotton along the bones, because after taking those plastic nerves out, the vertebrae would spin. So doing this will help the vertebrae stay in place. And by doing this, it makes it look like the tendons and muscles and things like that are still attached to the spine, like it wasn't picked completely clean. and just working my way down all the way to the tailbone. And this is the part where I realized I should have glued the jaw to begin with. So I just put a little drop of Gorilla Glue on a toothpick or on a skewer and went inside the mouth and tried to get it to hold in place the best I could, which actually worked out really well. So this is a few days later. I'm working on the other side of the jaw and the other side of the spine. You can see the color of the latex there, how it dries. It dries, makes it look like tendons and like it's been sitting for a while. Which is also nice on this project. If you don't want to do the gore, you can just use the latex and just leave it as is, and it will give it kind of an old tanned look, like meat that's really dried up or ligaments that have really dried. And again, I'm just using popsicle sticks and skewers to stretch the cotton into the desired shape. And this does take some time depending on the look you're going for, so enjoy it. Just go slow. You can do as much or as little as you want. On this part, I'm really building up the back of the head and the spine to kind of make it all flow together as one. And then a couple days later, once the back of the spine and most of the head was done, I went back and finished the jaw and added some more detail to the mouth and the eyebrow, or the nose and the brow area. And I went back again, putting another heavy layer down the side of each of the spine. And I did that on on both sides. And then I also came back and left little areas on the front of the spine just to give it some more texture. So again, this is a few days later. I'm working on the eyeballs. I just took some 1-inch round eyeballs, drilled a couple holes in them. I think I used some latex to help glue the skewer into the eyeball. And then just using a little cup to hold it, I went and applied about three or four coats of white acrylic paint to these to give it a good base. And after the white paint was dried, I took some blue acrylic paint and painted the iris on there. I could have spent a little more time on them. They weren't as round as I wanted, but I think they still turned out pretty cool. And I didn't really like the blue color. It was just a starting point. It was a lot brighter than I wanted. When that was dry, I went back with some yellow and put it over the top of the blue. Doing the yellow over the blue, it kind of gave it a blotchy, dead look, kind of like a zombie eyeball, I guess. So then I grabbed some red paint and I was going to paint a couple veins on the eyeball. When I started, it didn't turn out the way I wanted. The lines were a lot thicker. The brush I was using was too big, so you need like a really tiny brush. So I ended up just taking the red and doing a dry brush over most of the eyeball. So once the eyeballs were dry, took a pair of pliers and a pair of dikes and cut off most of the skewer from the eyeballs. I'm going to use some cheap air dry clay that I had and set the eyes into the skull. The color doesn't really matter here because I was going to paint over it anyways, so it's like a terracotta color. So I took a good sized chunk and pushed it in the eye socket. You get it to sit in there really well. And then just grabbed an eyeball and pushed it in until I was happy with the depth that it was sitting at and the direction that it was looking. I was trying to get them to line up correctly. Do the same thing on both eyeballs. And like I said before, I was just kind of making this up as I went along, so I'm sure you can figure out better ways to do these, but it's just what I did, and it worked. Once I had the eyeballs kind of roughly where I wanted them, I went back with a popsicle stick and just flattened out any of the clay that was sticking out too much or something I didn't like. You can use a toothpick, anything small to get in there. Here I'm just making sure the eyes aren't pushing out too far. And originally I planned on having this as kind of a handheld prop, but after thinking about it, I grabbed some of these 6-foot bamboo poles that I had. I didn't really get a good video of it because I was just just running it through my head of what I could potentially do. So what I ended up doing was I run a wire through these holes and made like a teepee. And once I had it all wired together, I just took some jute twine and just went around and made it look like it was all tied together. The twine's not really holding it or doing anything, just for looks. And once I was happy with the way it was looking and the strength of it, I took a little latex just to seal it and brushed it on there. And here I was just kind of playing around with some possible decoration ideas. I had some skulls and pumpkins and tried a lot of different things, but I don't know. We'll see what we do with it. And then ultimately, I did not like how tall it was. I wanted something quite a bit taller to make that spine not really like drag on the ground. So a day or two later, I grabbed 3 more pieces of bamboo, and I believe I cut off about 30 inches. And with this, I'm going to extend the legs of the teepee, tripod, whatever you want to call it. So just marking all the pieces, and I went back, cut them all off. And I wasn't really sure how I was going to do this, so I grabbed some gaff tape. I was just going to kind of mock up what I wanted to see how it looked before I did anything permanent. So I just attached the 30-inch piece to the bottom of each leg, and the height of that actually worked out really well. So I went through all 3 of those and then used the leftover pieces for some bracing. Once I was happy with the overall layout, I grabbed some drywall screws and put 2 or 3 screws in each leg just to hold it together until I could wrap those with some jute twine. So now I started adding the crossbars. This really gave it a lot more strength. I just started out, tied a knot in the jute twine and wrapped it around until I felt it was secure enough. And then went around all 3 sides doing the same thing. Removed the tape as I went around. And I think, ultimately, I think this is a better design because it gives you, like what I'm going to do in the end is hang, other bones and body parts, maybe some skin. This just gives me more area to hang items off of. Now I grabbed my glue gun, some heavier jute twine. I'm going to wrap over the legs that I just attached. This is more just cosmetic, just to cover the cut ends of the bamboo. I just start out by using a little hot glue to hold it, and then just keep wrapping it around till I'm happy with it, and finish it off with some more hot glue. This did give it a little bit of strength, but it really is mostly just cosmetic. Now here, this is the top of the tripod. I'm going to do the same thing just to bulk it up a little bit, and I found a little metal ring that I'm going to use to hang the skull and spine from. So I just started out wrapping this around and then eventually put that ring on a larger loop that hangs down. And again, there's nothing structural about what I'm doing. This is just to give it a look. Once I had the ring in there, I wanted to kind of mock up how it was going to look and see how it would sit. So I just wrapped some twine around the spine, and I think it's going to work out pretty well. So then, this is a couple days later. I went on Amazon and was looking for some large fishing hooks. I couldn't find anything big enough that I liked, so I ended up grabbing these meat hooks. And what I'm doing here is I'm going to drill a hole in the skull, or drill 2 holes in the skull to make it look like somebody shoved the meat hook through it. And I could have used larger holes, but I really wanted it to be tight. And getting it to pass through the second hole did not work. So with the Dremel tool, I cut out a large slit, and this allowed me to pass the hook back through the head. Then I just had to repair it a little bit with some latex. Plus it allowed me to add some texture or add some skin look to the hook itself, like it had chunks of flesh or meat stuck on the hook. So then once I was happy with that, I let it dry again for a couple days. And here I'm using some Nova Color. It's a transparent red iron oxide paint. I'll put a link to it in the description below. It's not an affiliate link. I don't get anything from it, but it's some really cool paint. It looks like blood straight out of the bottle. And I think also too, if you did not want to do this step, you could leave it just as the skull with the kind of sinewy latex on there if you don't want to do the gore part of it. And I'm just applying a layer to the entire thing, trying to leave it thin in spots where I want the bone and the sinew to stick out, and heavier in other areas where I want the blood stand out instead of the bone. In areas like the back of the spine, I put it on quite a bit thicker to give it kind of more of a bloody look. And now I'm just hanging it from the tripod to finish any touch-ups on the paint, so you can kind of get an idea of what this is going to look like. And then once I was done with the skull and the spine, I started on the tripod itself. I started out just painting a little bit of blood on there. I ended up putting a glove on and painting the glove and then sliding my hand around. Like as if somebody was using this, they would probably get it pretty bloody doing that. And you could do a lot more than paint on this. Eventually I'm going to add more to it. Maybe some little animal skulls, clothing, like I said before, skin. So it won't be done in this video, but hopefully it'll give you some ideas of what you can do. I mean, even if you wanted to do more of a burnt skull, you could build a little fake fire underneath this thing, like somebody was cooking from it. This one's done. Thanks for watching, guys.